Full voiceover script. Russia 2002. The Complete Review. Introduction: A New Era. The year 2002 was a definitive period for Russia. It was the moment when the country finally moved away from the chaos of the 1990s toward a new model of statehood. It was a year of big oil, of massive reforms, and at the same time, a year when the Chechen conflict reached the very heart of Moscow. State building and politics throughout 2002. Vladimir Putin continued to build the vertical of power, focusing on legal framework and centralization. The judicial reform was a major milestone. New codes came into effect: the Criminal Procedure Code and the Arbitration Procedure Code. This was an attempt to make the court system more adversarial. For the first time, the institution of trial by jury was introduced across the entire country, and a court order was now required for an arrest, a power that previously belonged solely to the prosecutor. In February, a new labor code replaced the old Soviet-era laws. It laid the foundation for modern relations between employers and employees in a market economy. The reform of the Federation Council also concluded. Governors and heads of regional legislatures stopped being senators themselves, sending representatives to Moscow instead. This stripped regional leaders of their direct influence on federal laws and their parliamentary immunity. Finally, the political landscape solidified with the creation of the United Russia Party, which became the dominant political force in the country. Security and tragedies. This year was one of the heaviest in terms of human loss and terror. From October 23rd to the 26th, the Nord-Ost siege occurred. A group led by Movsar Barayev took 916 people hostage in the Dubrovka Theater Center. Their demand was the withdrawal of troops from Chechnya. During the rescue operation involving the use of an incapacitating gas, 130 hostages died according to official data. This event ended all direct negotiations with Chechen separatists and led to a drastic strengthening of the secret services. On September 20th, a massive disaster struck the North Caucasus. The Kolchuga Glacier, 21 million cubic meters of ice and rock, collapsed in the Karmadan Gorge. The entire film crew of the movie The Messenger was buried, including the iconic actor and director, Sergei Bodrov Jr. On May 9th, during the Victory Day celebrations, a terrorist attack in Kaspiysk killed 43 people, including 12 children. This served as a grim reminder that the North Caucasus remained highly unstable. In October, a high-profile assassination shocked the nation. The governor of the Magadan region, Valentin Tsvetkov, was shot dead on the New Arbat in Moscow. It was the most prominent contract killing of a high-ranking official in the 2000s, linked to the distribution of gold and fishing quotas. Economy and society. Russia began to feel the benefits of high oil prices, which fluctuated around $20 to $25 per barrel. The first national census was a massive effort to understand what had happened to the population since 1989. The result: 145.2 million people. It revealed a sharp decline in Siberia and the Far East, and the rapid growth of megacities. 2002 also saw the introduction of OSAGO, compulsory motor third-party liability insurance. Signed by Putin on April the 25th, it forever changed driving culture and ended the era of street confrontations over car accidents. Additionally, A revolutionary law on the turnover of agricultural land was passed, allowing the sale and purchase of farmland for the first time, sparking the growth of large agricultural holdings. Culture, media, and sports. The World Cup was a disappointment. Russia failed to exit the group stage, which triggered mass riots on Manasnaya Square in Moscow on June 9th. The destruction of the city center was a shock to the authorities. At the Salt Lake City Olympics, Russia took fifth place amid fierce protests against the judging in figure skating, specifically regarding Anton Sikarulidze and Elena Berezhnaya. In the media, the era of the old independent NTV came to an end, as the TV6 channel was shut down in January. On the screen, the series Brigada was released, becoming a cult phenomenon. It romanticized the criminal 90s while showing the tragic end of that era. In music, the group TATU became the most successful Russian export in history, dominating global charts with their English-language debut. International relations between the US and Russia were at their peak. After the events of September 11th, Putin and Bush were close allies. In May, Bush visited Moscow and St. Petersburg, and both leaders signed the Strategic Offensive Reductions Treaty. Russia supported U.S. operations in Afghanistan, and the Russia-NATO Council was established, sparking serious talk about Russia's integration into European security. USA 2002, The Axis of Evil and the Global Triangle. Introduction, The Echo of September 11th. The year 2002 was a period of profound transformation for the United States. The nation was still living under the heavy shadow of the September 11th terrorist attacks, and the administration of George W. Bush began to radically restructure both domestic security and global politics. It was a year when America went on a decisive offensive. The geopolitical triangle USA, Russia, and Ukraine. In 2002, Washington was playing a complex game across the post-Soviet space. On one hand, relations with Moscow reached their historic peak. In May 2002, President Bush traveled to Russia to sign a landmark treaty with Vladimir Putin on the reduction of nuclear arsenals. The United States officially recognized Russia as a country with a market economy, and the White House viewed the Kremlin as its primary ally in the global war on terror. But against this backdrop, relations between the United States and Ukraine took a sharp turn for the worse. Washington was deeply concerned that Ukraine might drift away from Western influence and pivot entirely toward Moscow. It was in 2002 that the Kolchuga scandal erupted. The United States accused President Kuchma of selling advanced radar systems to Iraq, which became a powerful tool of pressure on Kyiv. American diplomacy essentially issued an ultimatum to Ukraine, demanding transparency, while simultaneously pushing the country toward NATO to create a strategic counterweight to Russian influence. This was the year Sknyliv when the United States began to actively support the Ukrainian opposition, seeing it as a viable alternative to the course set by Kuchma. The Axis of Evil and the Path to War. On January 29th, during his State of the Union address, President Bush introduced the term Axis of Evil, grouping together Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. He accused these nations of supporting terrorism and seeking weapons of mass destruction. This speech was a de facto declaration of a regime change policy. By October 2002, Congress passed a critical resolution, granting the president the authority to use military force against Iraq. This decision forced both Russia and Ukraine to choose a side in the looming global conflict. The Catholic Church scandal within the country. The most shocking news of the year was the investigation by the Boston Globe. In January 2002, journalists began publishing revelations about widespread cases of sexual abuse of minors by priests, which had been covered up by the church for decades. This scandal hit like an explosion, leading to the resignation of Cardinal Bernard Law and forever changing the level of trust Americans placed in religious institutions. Corporate collapses and the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The U.S. economy was shaken by internal shocks throughout 2002. The collapse of giants like Enron and WorldCom, due to massive financial fraud, destroyed investor confidence in the stock market. In response, on July 30th, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was passed. It introduced the strictest financial reporting rules for corporations in history, which remain the gold standard to this day. The Washington Sniper and Guantanamo Bay. In October 2002, the United States faced domestic terror. For 3 weeks, the so-called Washington Sniper killed 10 people in the capital region, plunging the country into a state of fear. Meanwhile, in January of that same year, the first detainees, suspected of ties to terrorists, were brought to the U.S. military base at Guantanamo Bay. The creation of this prison and the legal status of the detainees sparked fierce criticism from human rights organizations worldwide, a controversy that continues to this day. Sports and culture, the Olympics and American Idol. In February, the Winter Olympic Games were held in Salt Lake City, remembered for unprecedented security measures and a massive judging scandal in figure skating. And in June, the show American Idol premiered on television, becoming a national obsession and launching an era of total dominance for reality TV in prime time. Ukraine 2002, The Complete Review. Introduction, A Year of Political Rupture. The year 2002 was a period of profound transformation and a deep, agonizing political crisis for Ukraine. Against a backdrop of relative economic stability, civil resistance began to boil over within the country, and President Leonid Kukma found himself under unprecedented pressure, both from the angry opposition at home and from the cynical West. It was the year when the old Soviet-style system began to show massive cracks that could no longer be hidden or painted over. The parliamentary elections. The triumph of Yushchenko. On March 31st, 2002, elections for the fourth convocation of the Supreme Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, took place. This was a seismic shift in the nation's history. For the first time, the opposition bloc, Our Ukraine, led by Viktor Yushchenko, won the most seats through party lists. His success was a total shock to the presidential administration. The parliament turned into a literal battlefield, where the opposition blocked the podiums for days, and pro-presidential forces tried to maintain control at any cost. At the same time, the Party of Regions powerfully entered the political stage, as the Donetsk clan began to actively assert its ambitions over the entire country. Viktor Yanukovych, in November 2002, was appointed prime minister, which was a strategic calculated move by Kuchma to balance the scales of power between the oligarchic groups. The Sknyliv tragedy, Bloody Skies. On July 27th, 2002, one of the most horrific and stomach-turning aviation disasters in human history occurred. During an air show at the Sknyliv airfield near Lviv, a Sukhoi Su-27 fighter jet, while performing a complex aerobatic maneuver, crashed directly into a massive crowd of spectators. 77 people were killed, including 28 children. Hundreds of people suffered devastating, life-altering injuries. The footage from the crash site, where the wreckage of the plane literally plowed through human bodies like a meat grinder, shocked the entire world. This led to massive purges in the top military ranks, public shame for the army, and life sentences for the pilots. The tragedy at Sknyliv became a symbol of the systemic collapse of safety and a profound, rotting crisis within the armed forces. The Kolchuga scandal and the American vice. In the fall of 2002, Ukraine found itself in the middle of a global international spy thriller. The United States officially accused Leonid Kuchma of secretly approving the sale of Kolchuga radar systems to Saddam Hussein's Iraq, bypassing United Nations sanctions. These systems were capable of detecting American stealth aircraft. The secret recordings made by Major Melnichenko, hidden literally under a sofa in the president's office, and became the primary evidence. Although the systems themselves were never found in Iraq later, Washington used this scandal to brutally twist the arms of official Kiev. The United States froze millions in financial aid, and at the NATO summit in Prague, Kuchma was provocatively seated far away from Bush because the organizers changed the seating arrangement from alphabetical order to the French language just to isolate him. It was a humiliating diplomatic slap in the face that forced Kuchma to seek protection and warmth from Moscow. The Rise Up Ukraine campaign. On September 16th, the anniversary of the disappearance and murder of journalist Georgy Gongadze, the opposition launched a decisive frontal attack. The Rise Up Ukraine campaign united bitter enemies: Yulia Tymoshenko, Viktor Yushchenko, and even the communist Petro Simonenko. Thousands of angry protesters, endless tent cities in the heart of Kyiv, violent clashes with the police, and the slogan, Kuchma out, thundering over the Kreshchatyk. The government responded harshly, using administrative resources and secret media censorship orders called temniki to smear the protest. It was a massive general rehearsal for the revolutionary events of 2004. The shuttle trader economy and the seventh kilometer. While politicians were dividing power and oil, ordinary people were surviving however they could. 2002 was the golden age for the seventh kilometer market near Odessa, a massive city made of thousands of shipping containers, became the largest employer in the country. Former engineers, doctors, and teachers who had become shuttle traders carried the entire economy on their tired backs, hauling heavy bags of goods from Turkey and China. This was the era of the bazaar, where the first capital was formed and a new middle class was born, hardened in borderlines, freezing nights, and the struggle against racketeering. The geopolitical split in May 2002, Ukraine made a bold, almost desperate statement, officially setting a course for joining the NATO alliance. This decision was made amid attempts to reconcile with the West After the Kolchuga scandal, Moscow reacted nervously and aggressively, increasing energy pressure. Ukraine in 2002 resembled a desperate tightrope walker, trying to maintain balance, and while the rope was being shaken violently from both sides, from Washington and from the Kremlin. Finale conclusion. This is how unpredictable, tragic, and at the same time promising 2002 was. We have walked through the negotiation halls in Moscow, peeked into the dark corridors of the White House, and felt the raw pain of Sknyliv and Dubrovka. It was a year when the old world finally faded into the past, and the new rules of the global game were just beginning to be written in blood and oil. If this journey into history resonated with you, if you remember those events or have your own unique story from 2002, be sure to share it in the comments below this video. For us, every detail matters. Subscribe to our channel, give us a like, so you do not miss the most interesting content. We do not just tell history, we live it again together with you. And our journey continues. Ahead is 2003, the year when the stakes will rise even higher and the world will find itself on the brink of a new great war. We are moving forward into 2003. See you in the next episode.